Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number. Analysis. Camille Flammarion was born at Montigny-le-Roi, France. Camille Flammarion Montigny-le-Roi. He became interested in astronomy at an early age, and when he was only 16 he wrote a book on the origin of the world. 16. The manuscript was not published at the time, but it came to the attention of Urbain Le Verrier, the director of the Paris Observatory. Paris Observatory Urbain Le Verrier. He became an assistant to Le Verrier in 1858 and worked as a calculator. 1858 Le Verrier. At 19, he wrote another book called The Plurality of Inhabited Worlds, in which he passionately claimed that life exists outside the planet Earth. 19 The Plurality of Inhabited Worlds. His most successful work, Popular Astronomy, was published in 1880, and eventually sold 130,000 copies. Popular Astronomy 1880, 130,000. With his own funds, he built an observatory at Juvisy and spent May to November of each year there. Juvisy, 511. In 1887, he founded the French Astronomical Society and served as editor of its monthly publication. 1887 French Astronomical Society. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number. 01. Born in 1627 in Blacknotley, Essex, England, John Ray was the son of the village blacksmith. 1627 Essex Blacknotley John Ray. At 16, he went to Cambridge University, where he studied widely and lectured on topics from Greek to mathematics, before joining the priesthood in 1660. 16 Cambridge 1660. To recover from an illness in 1650, he had taken to nature walks and developed an interest in botany. 1650. Accompanied by his wealthy student and supporter Francis Willoughby, Ray toured Britain and Europe in the 1660s, studying and collecting plants and animals. Francis Willoughby Ray 1660. He married Margaret Oakley in 1673 and, after leaving Willoughby's household, lived quietly in Blacknotley to the age of 77. 1673 Margaret Oakley, Willoughby Blacknotley 77. He spent his later years studying samples in order to assemble plant and animal catalogues. He wrote more than 20 works on theology and his travels, as well as on plants and their form and function. 20. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number. 02. British photographer Julia Margaret Cameron is considered one of the greatest portrait photographers of the 19th century. Julia Margaret Cameron 19. Born in Calcutta, India, into a British family, Cameron was educated in France. Calcutta Cameron. Given a camera as a gift by her daughter in December 1863, she quickly and energetically devoted herself to the art of photography. 186312. She cleared out a chicken coop and converted it into studio space where she began to work as a photographer. Cameron made illustrative studio photographs, convincing friends and family members to pose for photographs, fitting them in theatrical costumes and carefully composing them into scenes. Cameron. Criticized for her so-called bad technique by art critics in her own time, she ignored convention and experimented with composition and focus. Later critics appreciated her valuing of spiritual depth over technical perfection and now consider her portraits to be among the finest expressions of the artistic possibilities of the medium. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number. 03. Janaki Ammal, one of India's most notable scientists, was born in 1897, and was expected to wed through an arranged marriage. Janaki Ammal 1897. Despite living at a time when literacy among women in India was less than 1%, she decided to reject tradition and attend college. 1%. In 1924, she went to the US and eventually received a doctorate in botany from the University of Michigan. 1924 Michigan. Amel contributed to the development of the sweetest sugarcane variety in the world. Amel. She moved to England where she co-authored the Chromosome Atlas of Cultivated Plants. Chromosome Atlas of Cultivated Plants. Following a series of famines, she returned to India to help increase food production at the request of the Prime Minister. However, Amel disagreed with the deforestation taking place in an effort to grow more food. Amel. She became an advocate for the preservation of native plants and successfully saved the Silent Valley from the construction of a hydroelectric dam. Silent Valley. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 04. Carl Gustav Rossby was one of a group of notable Scandinavian researchers who worked with the Norwegian meteorologist Wilhelm Bjerknes at the University of Bergen. Carl Gustav Rossby Bergen Wilhelm Bjerknes. While growing up in Stockholm, Rossby received a traditional education. Stockholm, Rossby. He earned a degree in mathematical physics at the University of Stockholm in 1918, but after hearing a lecture by Bjerknes, and apparently bored with Stockholm, he moved to the newly established Geophysical Institute in Bergen. 1918 University of Stockholm, Bjerknes, Stockholm, Bergen. In 1925, Rossby received a scholarship from the Sweden America Foundation to go to the United States, where he joined the United States Weather Bureau. 1925 Rossby. Based in part on his practical experience in weather forecasting, Rossby had become a supporter of the polar front theory, which explains the cyclonic circulation that develops at the boundary between warm and cold air masses. Rossby polar front theory. In 1947, Rossby accepted the chair of the Institute of Meteorology, which had been set up for him at the University of Stockholm, where he remained until his death 10 years later. 1947 Rossby University of Stockholm, 10. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 05. The monarch butterfly has lovely bright colors splashed on its wings. The wings have white spots on the outer margins. The hind wings are rounded, and they are lighter in color than the front wings. The body is black with white spots. The mother butterfly lays only one egg on the underside of milkweed leaves, which hatches about 3 to 5 days later. 3-5. The monarch loves to fly around in the warm sunshine, from March through October, all across the United States. 310. The monarch cannot survive the cold winter temperatures of the northern states. So, it very wisely migrates from the northern states to the south, and hibernates. The monarch is the only insect that can fly more than 4,000 kilometers to a warmer climate. 4. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 06. Gordon Parks was a photographer, author, film director, and musician. Gordon Parks. He documented the everyday lives of African Americans at a time when few people outside the black community were familiar with their lives. Parks was born the youngest of 15 children and grew up on his family's farm. Parks 15. After the death of his mother, he went to live with a sister in Minnesota. Minnesota. Parks eventually dropped out of school and worked at various jobs. Parks. His interest in photography was inspired by a photo essay he read about migrant farm workers. After he moved to Chicago, Parks began taking photos of poor African Americans. Parks. In 1949, he became the first African American to be a staff photographer for Life magazine. 1949 Life. He also wrote music pieces in his life, and in 1956 the Vienna Orchestra performed a piano concerto he wrote. 1956 Vienna Orchestra. Parks was an inspiring artist until he died in 2006. Parks 2006. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 07. John Bowlby, British developmental psychologist and psychiatrist, was born in 1907, to an upper-middle-class family. John Bowlby 1907. His father, who was a member of the King's medical staff, was often absent. Bowlby was cared for primarily by a nanny and did not spend much time with his mother, as was customary at that time for his class. Bowlby was sent to a boarding school at the age of 7. Bowlby 7. He later recalled this as being traumatic to his development. This experience, however, proved to have a large impact on Bowlby, whose work focused on children's development. Bowlby. Following his father's suggestion, Bowlby enrolled at Trinity College, Cambridge to study medicine, but by his third year, he changed his focus to psychology. Bowlby Cambridge Trinity 3. During the 1950s, Bowlby briefly worked as a mental health consultant for the World Health Organization. 1950 Bowlby. His attachment theory has been described as the dominant approach to understanding early social development. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 08. Patricia Bath spent her life advocating for eye health. Patricia Bath. Born in 1942, she was raised in the Harlem area of New York City. 1942, New York City, Harlem. She graduated from Howard University's College of Medicine in 1968. Howard 1968. It was during her time as a medical intern that she saw that many poor people and black people were becoming blind because of the lack of eye care. She decided to concentrate on ophthalmology, which is the branch of medicine that works with eye diseases and disorders. As her career progressed, Bath taught students in medical schools and trained other doctors. In 1976, she co-founded the American Institute for the Prevention of Blindness, AIPB, with the basic principle that eyesight is a basic human right. 1976, AIPB. In the 1980s, Bath began researching the use of lasers in eye treatments. 1980 Bath. Her research led to her becoming the first African American female doctor to receive a patent for a medical device. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 09. Born in 1895, Carol Ryrie Brink was orphaned by age 8 and raised by her grandmother. 1895 Carol Ryrie Brink 8. Her grandmother's life and storytelling abilities inspired her writing. She married Raymond Woodard Brink, a young mathematics professor she had met in Moscow, Idaho many years before. Idaho, Moscow. Raymond Woodard Brink. After their son and daughter were born, early in her career, she started to write children's stories and edited a yearly collection of short stories. She and her husband spent several years living in France, and her first novel Anything Can Happen on the River was published in 1934. Anything Can Happen on the River 1934. After that, she wrote more than 30 fiction and non-fiction books for children and adults. 30. She received the Newbery Award in 1936 for Caddy Woodlawn. Caddy Woodlawn 1936 Newbery. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 10. Alice Coachman was born in 1923, in Albany, Georgia, USA. Alice Coachman 1923 Georgia, Albany. Since she was unable to access athletic training facilities because of the racism of the time, she trained using what was available to her, running barefoot along the dirt roads near her home and using homemade equipment to practice her jumping. Her talent in track and field was noticeable as early as elementary school. Coachman kept practicing hard and gained attention with her achievements in several competitions during her time in high school and college. Coachman. In the 1948 London Olympics, Coachman competed in the high jump, reaching 5 feet, 6.5 inches, setting both an Olympic and an American record. 1948 Coachman 5.6.5. This accomplishment made her the first black woman to win an Olympic gold medal. She is in 9 different halls of fame, including the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame. 9. Coachman died in 2014, at the age of 90 in Georgia after she had dedicated her life to education. Coachman 2014 Georgia 90. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 11. Vera Rubin was born in 1928 in Philadelphia and grew up in Washington, D.C. Vera Rubin 1928 Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. It was in Washington, D.C. that she started to develop an interest in astronomy. Washington, D.C. She earned a master's degree from Cornell University in 1951 and a doctor's degree from Georgetown University in 1954. 1951 Cornell, 1954 Georgetown. At the age of 22, she made headlines and shocked scientists with her theory about the motion of galaxies. 22. In 1965, Rubin started as a researcher at the Carnegie Institution and became the first woman permitted to use the Hale telescope. 1965 Rubin Carnegie Institution, Hale. She made groundbreaking observations that provided evidence for the existence of a vast amount of dark matter in the universe. She won many prizes for her work, but never the Nobel Prize. She died in 2016 and is celebrated as someone who worked to lead the way for women in astronomy and physics. 2016. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 242, Chapter 9 Number 12. The impala is one of the most graceful four-legged animals. Impalas have the ability to adapt to different environments of the savannas. Both male and female impalas are similar in color, with white bellies and black-tipped ears. Male impalas have long and pointed horns which can measure 90 centimeters in length. 90. Female impalas have no horns. Impalas feed upon grass, fruits, and leaves from trees. When conditions are harsh in the dry season, they come together to search for food in mixed herds which can number as many as 100 to 200 individuals. 100200. The breeding season occurs at the end of the wet season around May. 5. Females give birth in an isolated spot away from the herd. The average lifespan of an impala is between 13 and 15 years in the wild. 1315. MTC. Good job.